start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing. Following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we will have the reading of the notice, please.
The adjourned organizational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, composed of 38 members, will convene at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, on Tuesday, July 19th at 7 p.m. The agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. And I would like to request everyone to please silence your cell phones or put them on vibrate and any other electronic devices as to not be an interruption in the meeting. And we will now proceed to roll call. And we have everybody identified as being present. We still are having some challenges with a couple of supervisors with the open meetings, but if we get to vote and we still have not received them as connected, we will take those votes over the speaker. Okay, we will move on to welcoming all of the visitors that we have here with us this evening, and thank them for their interest in Marathon County and county government, including those on the viewing audience. And so we'll move on to, we have a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for Marathon County to take testimony as it relates to vacating a portion of right-of-way for County Highway C, Town of Bergen. Is there anyone wishing to give testimony on that potential action by this board? Again, anyone wishing to testify or give testimony on the vacating of a right-of-way on Highway C in the town of Bergen? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and we will move on to education presentation reports. And we have with us this evening, I would like to introduce the new campus executive director, and that's Dr. Toms. And I also would like to recognize the former campus executive, and that is Ann Herter-Rappa. She is retiring has retired, I should say, as the campus exec. We still have her, though, as she is rejoined faculty. And so, Ann, if you would, please, and Dr. Toms, please. Oh, we got it. There we go.
I should know that by now. You'll notice the smile on my face because I get to return to my faculty position, and I have been grateful for the last 4 years, but my real passion is teaching, and so I took on this role to serve the campus that I love, the community that I love, but now I'm going to return to the job that I love. So I thank you very much for your support these last 4 years. It's been certainly challenging with restructuring, touching every single process imaginable, and then, of course, a pandemic. But now I'm very happy to turn it over to, I have already turned it over to Dr. Ozala Toms, and the Education Committee has already met her. So she'll introduce herself, and then I'll help to hand out a handout that she's got as well. So thank you.
Right, so good evening, everyone. Ozella Toms, as everyone has said, I spent about 10 years at UW-Whitewater as a faculty member. I taught in a college education. And then for 3 years, I was a full-time administrator, an assistant vice chancellor for I oversaw about 16 university-wide programs. Prior to that, I was a high school special education teacher. So I am really excited to be here, to be in your community, my community now. And I guess a little personal note, I have 3 amazing but interesting boys, 18, 24, and 27. So, and 2 grandchildren, 5 and almost 2. So just a little about me, and I'm excited about the partnership and working with everyone, and we do have some handouts. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Toms, and welcome, and thank you, Ann, for all of your work for the campus. Now, some still want to call it UW Marathon County. I'm not sure who, but it's UW Stevens Point Wausau campus. So thank you for your service, and good luck in your next venture or return to your faculty position. So thank you for all of the service to the county. So with that, we will move on then to the consent agenda. Consent agenda item D, item D9 through item D13E. What is your pleasure? And again, we're utilizing the open meetings. So I have a motion by Supervisor Zhang and a second by Supervisor Langenhan. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion manager already. Okay. And we have, it looks like we have had no requests to speak, and so we will move and proceed to vote. No, I apologize. IT is not with us tonight. So Supervisor Cavelli, I would ask how you choose to vote on the consent agenda item? And all right, your vote yes has been recorded. And Supervisor Bushman? And your vote yes has been recorded.
Are you disconnected too?
Supervisor Unger, yours has also been disconnected. And it is now reconnected, and your vote has been recorded. And we will proceed. And the vote is passed, unanimous. Thank you. And we will move on to resolutions from the Public Safety Committee. Item number E14, PSAP grant funding for 1 public safety answering point per county. Resolution 45-22. What is your pleasure? Showing up here. Move on.
Mr. Chairman, it does not appear that the electronics are keeping up with you.
You're right. There we are. Supervisor Mask with a motion and Supervisor Vensky with the second. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? And there's no discussion and no request to speak, so we will proceed to vote on the item. And we need Supervisor Cavelli, please. Yes. As Supervisor Cavelli is an aye, and Supervisor Bushman. Yes. And Supervisor Bushman is an aye, and we'll proceed. And the motion is carried. And it was not unanimous. And we'll move on to number 17, E15, a resolution honoring the service of the Honorable Greg Huber, Resolution 46-22. And I will have the clerk read the resolution, please.
Resolution recognizing the service of Honorable Greg Huber. Whereas Judge Gregory Huber is retiring from his position as Marathon County Circuit Court Judge for Branch 2 as of July 31st, 2022, after serving on the judiciary in Marathon County since April 2004, and whereas Judge Huber was born on January 25th, 1956 in Wausau, Wisconsin, and is a graduate of Watertown High School, Judge Huber earned his bachelor's and law degrees from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And whereas Judge Huber began serving the public early in his career, working as an assistant district attorney in Marathon County and as a law clerk for the Circuit Court in Outagamie County. And whereas Judge Huber subsequently served 8 terms as a state representative in the Wisconsin legislature, representing Marathon County residents in the 85th Assembly District from January 2nd, 1989 to May 31st, 2004, serving on the Joint Finance Committee, the Joint Legislative Council, the Reapportionment Committee, the Tax Delinquent Contaminated Land Committee, and the Elections, Constitutional Law and Corrections Committee. And whereas Judge Huber was elected as Circuit Court Judge for Branch 2 in Marathon County in April 2004 and was reelected in 2010 and 2016. And whereas in 2016, the Wisconsin Supreme Court appointed Judge Huber as Chief Judge of the 9th Judicial District of Wisconsin Circuit Courts. Judge Huber was reappointed to this position in 2018 and 2020. And whereas Judge Huber has dedicated his career to serving the citizens of Wisconsin and Marathon County, his advocacy on behalf of Marathon County residents in the state legislature, and his leadership and guidance as a member of Marathon County's judicial system will have long-lasting benefits for Marathon County and for the state of Wisconsin. And whereas Judge Huber has served the residents of Marathon County with dignity, dedication, and integrity as a public servant for decades. In his retirement, Marathon County loses a key leader and respected voice. However, Marathon County will forever benefit from his years of devoted service and tireless advocacy. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Marathon does hereby enter this resolution into the proceedings of the Board out of respect for the service of Honorable Greg Huber, Marathon County Circuit Court Judge, Branch 2, and congratulates Judge Huber on his retirement.
And we have a motion by Supervisor Vensky and a second by Supervisor Zhang. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. And Supervisor Crivelli and Supervisor Bushman. Thank you, and we'll proceed. And the result is unanimous, and thank you. And I, from the chair, would like to also extend a sincere appreciation to the judge for dedicating his life as a public servant to the citizens of Marathon County, and wish him well in his next endeavors. We will move on to item F from Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee. Just a clarification. Item number 16, F16, the one that says amend the 2022 budget to accept grant funds for the Family Keys pilot project, Resolution 44-22, has been pulled, but there is an explanation as to why it's being pulled, and that explanation will be provided by the Chair of HR Finance and Corp Counsel.
So in reviewing the county board process for approving grants, the rules extend the power to review grants and approve them to the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee. The issue of appropriations is one that is for the county board. So based on a discussion with the Corporation Council, the concern is you could approve one and not the other, and so you would have conflicting resolutions. The operable motion would be the budget transfer or the next document, which will require a 2/3 vote of the county board. You could hypothetically have a majority vote for one and not the 2/3 for the other. So to reduce the confusion and potential conflicts between the two motions, the operable motion would be the departmental, the budget transfers. And if you wish to deal with that as a separate item, you can divide the question when that issue comes before us.
Corp Counsel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Robinson put that in as better words than I was going to, so I'll just reiterate that really the idea here is that the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee is delegated under our county board rules in accepting grant funds, whereas the full board is the body empowered to approve appropriations. So the proper resolution before the board is the actual appropriation of the money today, and the grant funding really isn't an issue for the board. If the board were to deny the budget transfer resolution as to that Family Keys pilot project, the grant funds would have to be returned because they couldn't be obviously kept and not utilized. So just clarification.
So it is as though that item did not exist on the agenda. Well, it was on the agenda, but it is pulled by the chair of the Finance Committee with the explanation that Corp Counsel provided. We are down to item number F, 17, approval of the 2022 budget transfers for Marathon County Department of Appropriations, Resolution 43-22. What is your pleasure? We're
Open meetings is not working again.
no, that is not correct. It's just we have to find the process in which we remove an item that is not being voted on. All right, we are going to, because we're having a difficulty with the open meetings, when the clerk tries to remove the one agenda item that has been pulled, it exits the system. And so we will take the remainder of the meeting, will be done by paper and voice vote or roll call vote, depending on desire of the body. So we're down to item number 17, approval of the 2022 budget transfers for Marathon County Department of Appropriations, Resolution 43-22. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Robinson and second by Vice Chair McEwen. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Dickinson.
Mr. Chair, I'd be looking to divide the question.
Okay, is there a second to divide the question? Second has been made. It is not debatable. All those in favor of dividing the question, which will effectively take and split the two different items on the budget transfers and make those two separate items to be voted on.
Mr. Chairman, please designate the two separate items. Call them out, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding of the motion, it's to divide the question. The first question would be consideration of the budget transfer of the Social Services Family Keys State Grant. The second question is consideration of the Sheriff's Office WEM HS Alert Communication Headsets appropriation. So those would be the two separate questions, if I'm getting that right, Supervisor Dickinson.
Supervisor Dickinson?
Yeah, to avoid any confusion on the vote, knowing that there's been a lot of discussion on Thursday, I just want to make sure that these two items can be, have a separate vote on them.
Okay, so who made the second? Supervisor Straczynski, okay. So the vote now is to divide, so we will have two separate votes moving forward. So a aye will divide the question and we'll separate it and make two separate votes. Is that everybody clear on what we're voting on? We're voting on whether or not you want to divide and have two separate votes on the budget transfer items. Okay? All those in favor of division signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. No. Okay, the motion carried and division has been granted. And we will take which one first?
The Family Keys Grant.
We will take the Family Keys Grant budget allocation first. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Van Cray and second by Supervisor Rosenberg to approve the budget transfers. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Gisselman.
Can you explain why the 2/3? Because if this isn't an appropriation, isn't an appropriation just because it's coming into the budget as such, but it's really just a transfer. So why, I guess I don't understand.
I'll have the Corp Counsel address that, but effectively, when the budget was adopted without a $327,100 grant. The Finance Committee has accepted the grant, and now the funds are potentially here, but they have to be allocated to the appropriate department. And so it is still a budget transfer, which does require a 2/3 majority.
But it's not an appropriation as such.
It is a transfer of the item, and we do have a county board rule that is on point. Anytime that the county board is appropriating money or dealing with expenditures of money that wasn't provided for in the adopted county budget, that requires a 2/3 vote of the membership of the board, so that's consistent also with state statute.
Okay, other discussion? Supervisor Straczynski.
Okay, is this the appropriate, first of all, point of question, so I'm doing this in the right order. Is this the point at time to discuss the Family Keys project and the resolution before us?
That is correct. That's what we are debating.
Okay.
That we are in the discussion portion of the transfer of the budget of Family Keys project.
Thank you for the clarification. Still new to the process, so I guess the reason why I wanted to speak is I was very surprised by the amount of discussion back and forth that we had at the educational meeting. I think there are a lot of good points that were raised on both sides of the issue. Clearly, everybody that's on that issue has some very, they have some very strong feelings. The other thing that I noticed is that I saw a lot of feedback from my constituents on the issue. So I think this is something that it's appropriate that we did split it out. My concern with this is twofold. One, we create government programs, and government programs never die. We talk about this being a pilot program, and it's a pilot program, and it's magically got no money associated with it from Marathon County taxpayers at the moment. But my concern is twofold. One, is the program actually going to be effective? And I think we can look back at, all the way back to 1968, and look at all the governmental social programs that have come and gone since then. And we have, at least at best, a mixed track record. You know, we don't have a lot of success. We have a lot of well-intentioned ideas, but we don't have a lot of success. So I'm very skeptical about the success with this. And the other thing that I'm very skeptical about is the idea that this is a pilot and that it will not somehow be self-perpetuating in the future in 2 years. So that's my statement.
Other discussion? Supervisor Lamont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me say that I agree with you that I appreciated the public input and all the question and answers that were given at our last educational meeting that helped to alleviate any major concerns that I had about this Family Keys grant. I believe that this could be a real blessing for the children and their parents who meet the conditions and are trying to get past the barrier of housing to reunite their families. I do have one question though, however, and it's in regards to 2 different emails that I received in regard to concerns about what specifically the grant money would be used for. Looking at the budget transfer authorization request form, I see that money will be used for rent, etc. But can you clarify the allocation of $104,000 for wages, temporary-regular? As the proposal by Vicki stated, $104,000 is part of the 2-year cost to provide individual case managements. That'd be $50,000 a year, I imagine. Would that be a cost to the county, or would that be a cost to the county somewhat, regardless of whether we try Family Keys or not? And therefore, wouldn't this grant funding of part of those wages be a savings to the county?
And the answer to that question is yes. The fact is the $104,000 is for staff, and that staff is needed and is used for those case managers on those programs when those children are in out-of-home placements. And they are required to do case management when there is court orders in this case, and they are overseeing of those court orders and working with those families. So the answer to this question is yes, that $104,000 would be a cost to the taxpayers. Will be a cost to the taxpayers if we choose not to accept that. It already is in the budget now as a tax levy. Administrator?
If I may, Mr. Chair, Director Tilka is here and she can clarify, but I think it's important to note that within the grant proposal, there is, certainly we do have obligations with respect to social services I think the mic is on, I hope. We do have obligations with respect to case management for families that are in our terms, open to social services. That is, they're working with us. And again, as Vicki clarified at the last meeting, that's an involuntary relationship. We are court-ordered to provide case management services. The important thing with this grant is it's a little bit different in terms of the type of case management that this program would be providing, and I'll ask Vicki to come on up and clarify, but a significant part of this is, again, to work with people to get them into stable housing as promptly as possible. And so, Vicki, do you want to come up and just clarify what you envision in terms of what that targeted case management would look like under the grant proposal that DCF has already approved.
So the $104,000 would be for a contract position that would really be over and above what our case management social workers are required to do. And that is to specifically work with the families to identify what barriers they have to be able to achieve more permanent housing, whether it is pieces of employment, education, resume, I mean, all the different things that could present itself for their particular barriers, is to be able to address those individually. And so that role, that case manager type role, is actually one that the other counties are included in their projects as well, because it really does take a specialty to be able to support the families in all of those areas. In addition to, our social workers will continue to work with them. So it's grant funded.
Other discussion? Supervisor Baker?
So just to clarify, because seems like I heard two different answers. This grant, the $104,000 will be used to pay existing staff, as I believe Chair Gibbs suggested, or it will be used to pay new staff, additional staff?
It would be used to pay new staff in terms of being contracted staff. We were not looking at requesting a new position for social services. So I think Chair Gibbs' comment about we continue to provide case management services overall, that part of that is through levy, like we talked about, the 60-40 split. This is going to be in addition to that, is that person who has that specialty position working with families that is grant funded. So if we wouldn't get the grant, we would not be contracting for that position.
Thank you.
And if I could just add one thing relative to positions, and I think I brought this up at can't remember if it was the full board or one of the committee meetings where this was discussed. Your board rules, if we wanted to, if staff recommended a new position, a new allocated position be created, like Vicki said, that has to ultimately come before the board for approval. It goes through a standing committee first to be considered, second by HR, Finance, and Property, and finally by the full board. So just to build on Supervisor Baker's point, to allocate those funds in any way other than a contractual service in a way that would encumber them past the life of the grant, that isn't permitted under your rules relative to new positions.
Supervisor Krause?
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. I didn't get to comment on this because I missed a couple of meetings for personal reasons, but I wanted to mention that living in low-income areas, I have come across several families that had their children taken away from them. One individual in Wausau here, and some of these individuals come from very prominent parents in the community, but for some reason their children get into drugs or prostitution or whatever and end up getting their children taken away from them. One particular individual I know was partying all the time. She had a daughter, and the daughter was left at home unfed, and the brothers were feeding the daughter when she was out partying. Well, the child was taken away from her. She was put in foster care, and then she was adopted. And this woman never got her child reunited with her for the rest of her life. It caused her to have an emotional crisis, and she's been on antidepressants the rest of her life. And her housing is unstable. If there was a program like this for her in the past, it would have changed her life. She would have had her daughter to raise and had gone through all kinds of counseling and rehab and so on. Her sons, who she did raise, were in and out of jail. So I'm thinking this program might be a good program for people in our community and change their lives for them. Thank you.
Supervisor Robinson?
Chair, the issue before us tonight is, should we accept the grant for the Family Keys program? And I think it begs for us to go back and revisit how we got here. And state statutes place responsibility on the county through the Department of Social Services and Children's Protective Services to take care of the interest of children who are neglected abused physically or mentally. And in this case, there is a petition to the court and a severance on a temporary basis of those parental rights and a placement of those children where appropriate into a different setting, whether it's foster care, residential care, or other forms of care. In 2018, the federal government adopted a policy that basically said that we're going to put families first. And to minimize the amount of trauma on children, we're going to try to reunite the families as soon as possible once conditions are appropriate for that reunification. What we have found on a local basis is that one of the impediments of getting parents and families back together is housing. In many cases, the people the parents have marginal means in which to pay for the housing. This effort in this pilot, locally crafted but federally funded or funded through grant dollars, is an effort for us to see if it will work and to address that issue of housing on a county basis, to allow us to establish a congregate housing unit that can host 3 to 4 families that will reunite the parents with their children to minimize that trauma. And without that house, the reunification may not occur. And so the question is will we be willing to take on a pilot project basis the risk of establishing that? There are savings to the county associated with this plan. If we can avoid foster care, residential care, or other treatment, we are avoiding 40% of the cost associated with those services. So those savings fall back to the county. So we do realize the savings when we do that. And I think that in light of the fact that we've got stakeholders that have been involved, landlords, the Greenhack Foundation, United Way, North Central Community Action Program that deal with housing units understand the need, and they have recommended this. I think we should move forward with advancing this grant application and accept those dollars to bring families back together, to provide the counseling in those settings, and to ensure success for the future.
Okay, we got Supervisor Dickinson and Supervisor Book.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just so everyone is clear, Mr. Chair, there is no mandate, there is no law in our state, there is no requirement of the Family First to provide housing to these individuals. Historically, the Family First Act was intended for a few things. One was to reduce congregate care settings, the sending of children to congregate care settings, which is individuals, I believe, 7 or more. In our county, in 2020, we had 10 such individuals. It's also intended to bring those children back into the family, but with that person receiving mental health services, substance abuse treatment, or improved parenting skills. That was part of the act itself. It wasn't to stop kids from going to foster care at all. Foster care actually has, the Casey Foundation and the state of Wisconsin has information and data on that 15% of the children end up in foster care, they get adopted. 55% of the children right now end up back with the family. And another, I believe it's 15%, I can get my numbers here, end up with relatives. So there is movement of children, 90% are being taken care of. You have some kids who fall through the cracks. So when we talk about taking care of children, I don't know much about the social services department. I don't know those individuals. I've heard they're fantastic, that they're doing great work in the county. This is no indictment upon them or the work that they do. What this ultimately results in is the extension of this Family First program into this Family Keys through the use of organizations like the Casey Foundation, which did come out saying that now we need to move this into a housing project kind of thing. We're talking about safe and adequate housing. It's the extension of that act to take this into government housing. And Supervisor Robinson had said that. So for me, when I look at this, what I see is this becoming a greater plan, something that's going to be with the government for a while, like Supervisor Chervinsky said. And there isn't going to be a way out of it. In 2 years when data comes back, or a year and a half when data comes back, typically what happens, what I've seen on the board, is that if the project is wanted, the information that's provided is to guide a yes vote. That isn't saying that people are manipulating the system, but if you like the program, you're going to come in here and you're going to say to us as experts, we think it's working, even if there are cases when it's not. Now, if you want to get rid of that, if you want to say we want to end that, what we know is it is very difficult to do so. Because when those folks come into the room and start speaking, like they did on Thursday night to some degree, we're supposed to accept that these people, in their good-hearted nature, that we need to vote yes with them. And that if you start to argue that somehow you are against what they're advocating for, and then to convince other people to kind of go with you on what you're thinking, it's even more difficult. And this is why, in my experience, we go down the path of government programs and they don't go, and we can't get rid of them. This is a housing project. This is the county getting involved in transitional housing, certainly for some people who need it. But I don't see the county getting involved in housing for some people we know who had a rent, who were getting ready to sign a rental agreement, and the landlord sold the property, and they were stuck. The county isn't getting involved in their situation. The county is not getting involved in a situation where you have students going to college who want to rent an apartment, but they don't have credit, and so they can't. And so what do they need? A cosigner. If they can't find one, they're stuck. The county does not get involved in that situation as well. So when we talk about these housing situations, there's a whole slew of things that we can talk about where we want to provide help. I don't think it's a good idea for us as a county at this point to be the pilot program for this. If Wood County and La Crosse want to do that, we can sit back for a year or two, we can see what the data is, and then we can have the discussion again. And if it works, fantastic. That would be my recommendation. Not that we take individuals and put them in a pilot situation, families who potentially don't know each other, who are dealing with their issues. We have no idea what that's going to turn out as, with cameras and no visitors and no financial analysis. We can say whatever we want, it's going to save us money. There's no financial analysis presented to us. I just don't think that's a good idea. Thank you.
So we have next Supervisor Unger, oh, excuse me, Supervisor Book was next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this grant perfect? No. I'm not on board with every premise, but it's the only option, to my knowledge, presented at this time with any teeth. Many have suggestions, but there's not much follow-through of which I'm aware. It's easy to cry not acceptable for a variety of reasons, but not so simple to arrive at a plan that has been as well researched, questioned, and supported by various people throughout this community as has this endeavor. We've considered the potential dangers of the project: sexual predators, safety of the children, irresponsible and dangerous drug use, unfit child caregivers. On the flip side, the inhabitants of these homes will have been heavily vetted, presumably anxious to begin a new and better life in the company of their children, and committed to now adopting prudent decisions with their own and their children's well-being as paramount. Safety cannot be guaranteed in any circumstance. Should a similar lack of surefire protection in this circumstance be grounds for eliminating grant money intended to provide a secure and healthy existence for families that will possibly benefit greatly from this service? There have been a lot of what-if questions asked expressing doubt. My response is, what if it works?
Okay, next we have Supervisor Unger.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs. I guess I want to say that I'm definitely an advocate for reuniting children with their parents. I would like to have seen the grant come in different ways, maybe by private funds or...
Please bring the mic a little closer to your...
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess where the real issue is a concern with my constituents is in my district, I've had a few reach out and say the safety of our children. You know, there's communal living, so you have teenagers, you have babies, you have children, moms and dads, different backgrounds. I've listened to, well, we were all here Thursday night. We listened to a lot of the public, what they had to say, our emails that have come in, texts, and our constituents. And I guess I just wanted to put out there 3 comments from my constituents. One comment was, this is not a thought-out plan. The other one said, why not find a place to live now, not interim, and then go to, 3 to 6, 9 months, a home. Communal homes, if this is a trial, this is not okay for our children. So I guess, we've kind of avoided talking about what this could do to, I don't know, 8 kids, 11 kids, 15 kids, however many children are in this communal living. Is there going to be trauma, devastating things, abuse that can happen within this community? There's not 24/7. I know the Hagar House has 24/7 somebody there to oversee. This is just I believe, it's there's an office in the middle, and people come in maybe a few hours a day. I'm not really quite sure how many hours a day. So there's not a lot of overseeing. So I guess lastly, I would consider voting yes, I guess, if there was a staff on site, if there were single-family housing, that would be a deterrent. But at this point, I'm listening to, these people that have reached out and my constituents, and my vote would be no at this time.
Any other discussion? We'll go to the supervisors who haven't spoken to the resolution first, and then we will proceed to return to individuals for a second round. Supervisor Boots.
It's on? Right, thank you. So I jotted some things down. I am speaking both as a supervisor and a public chair for public safety. I am asking the members of this board to support the Family Keys grant. I can appreciate some of the questions and concerns that have been expressed by some of the board members in regards to this program. It should always be the job of this board to educate themselves on a topic or program they don't completely understand. On the other side of that, it should always be the job of our staff to educate us and alleviate any concerns we have with said program as it relates to our job as policy board. Well, in my mind, staff has done a great job bringing us up to speed with what this program means to do. We have the support from the following: state representation, guardian ad litems, foster parents, our law enforcement agencies, social services, corp counsel, and judges. This is a grant. We talk about saving taxpayer dollars, and in the next breath say we're not going to accept funds. You can't have it both ways. If you're going to claim to be fiscally conservative, be fiscally conservative. I've been in local government for 19 years, and the one thing that has always bothered me was people coming in to voice their problems, but when you give them what their mind was a solution, they typically find a problem with your solution. One thing is certain, it's easy to find a problem. It's coming up with solutions that is hard. This is a possible solution to a problem we have in Marathon County. Do you want to save tax dollars? Start looking at alternative solutions. They are not all going to work, but as I have heard numerous times in this very room, some of the things we are doing just aren't working. This is the main reason for grants, thinking outside the box and trying something new. To be clear, this money has already been apportioned. If Marathon County doesn't want it, somebody else will take it. Thank you, and please consider voting yes.
Other discussion? Supervisor Arstead.
Thank you, Chair. I believe this is a much-needed program, and I trust that everybody that has worked on this, Vicki and her team, Lance, and everything that they've gone through with vetting out those questions. And I, too, have received recurrent questions from constituents. And the biggest one that has come to me is the communal living. And they just don't feel that it is a safe situation to have the families together. And if there is a possibility to do single-family housing that would come available, is this something that could be transitioned from the communal living situation rather than what's been going on? The other thing that I have questions about is the grant. Is there a deadline on the grant? And is this something that we should table? Thank you.
So there's several questions. I'll allow the administrator and the social services director to answer those questions.
So we are the last county, yeah, it's on. We are the,
We'll do this for you.
thank you. The other counties have accepted the grant, and we're being asked to accept the grant, or we wouldn't participate in the program at this point because the project is moving on. So that's really the response to that. In terms of the communal living or congregate living, what I want to remind people of is that these parents have done everything that they needed to do through the court order and have been determined through a professional assessment that they're safe caregivers. They could live in another house with each other if they wanted to, and they could afford it. The question is whether or not they have the money to be able to sustain the housing or to even access it, let alone sustain it. So I think that for us to really understand where these people are in terms of the level of change they've made in their life, they are ready to be with their children. And again, Marathon County keeps our cases, our court cases open for another year to be able to further support the families with the court oversight in order to try to assure success. Because it is a lot of change that goes through with children being removed and then being returned home. So there's lots of things that certainly can be supported. So that's like our extra effort to be able to do that. But again, these families have, I guess, graduated, if you want to use that term, to be able to live on their own. So the 24-hour supervision is something that they simply would not be required to have. If they could have a place, a safe and accessible house on their own, they would be living on their own. Did you want to add something? No, I've got it all.
Sure. I think the last question that I heard asked was, is there the opportunity to look at, during the life of the grant and certainly after, the opportunity to identify single-family housing options? And I think that's going back to the last question about targeted case management. I think we're going to learn a lot about what families need to access that long-term, sustainable, single-family housing, or if they want to live, as Vicki said, right now they could all go live together and the courts would place them together if it were safe and appropriate and based on the team that Vicki's got doing the evaluations. But whether they live in an apartment with multiple people, whether they move in with family, that is frequently something we see. Children are placed with a parent, so it's an in-home placement, but they live in the home of someone else. That happens very frequently. So I think I'm challenging all of us to think about outside of our own lens of experience. Quite honestly, these are not families that, before I worked as a prosecutor or as a CHIPS prosecutor, a Children in Need of Protection or Services prosecutor, they were outside the realm of my personal experience. These are families, as referenced before, that have challenges that on a daily basis make my life look exceedingly easy, and I'm very fortunate for that. But I think, to your point, can we learn and identify other ways to do it? Absolutely. To borrow from more eloquently stated by Supervisor Boots, that's the point of a grant, is to try to learn. So I hope that answers your question.
Other discussion? We have Supervisor Sandalski.
Okay, after hearing the presentations with the family keys, I do not see a real clear and concise plan to set up these families for success. After their short stay in these government-funded rental properties, AKA taxpayer-funded, There is no clear plan for accountability and giving these families responsibilities. For one, random, often drug testing must be done within, which I haven't heard it mentioned. I would also ask for some responsibility with these families, maybe to pay just a small portion of the rental. So for example, so that they have a stake in it. Example, they pay $100 the first month, $200 the second month, $300, just keep adding up so that when they are released from these government housing establishments, they will have greater success, they will understand, they will have responsibilities. Otherwise, it could pretty much just turn into, I could see it turning into a permanent, like a welfare housing where people will stay and they won't want to leave. In conclusion, I would highly recommend these privately funded organizations, such as the Haggard House, the Gospel TLC, and the Bridge Street Missions, etc., that seem to have great plans for success that do not involve the federal or state governments and are privately funded. Thank you.
Other Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I get it, and I understand and appreciate all the questions and concerns about this program. But for myself, being involved in law enforcement for nearly 30 years in Marathon County, I've worked with many social workers from Marathon County Department of Social Services, and never did I doubt that the social workers would jeopardize the safety of any of the children that we were dealing with at that time. I know there are concerns about where the money comes from, and I also, I can't disagree with that. However, the only reason that does not overly concern me is who has control over the money and the program, and that's Marathon County Department of Social Services. I believe Vicki Telka, our director, tried to answer all the questions during the presentations to the board. There's not one person in this room that would not help a child if they knew they were in danger or in a situation that they needed to be removed from. I realize we cannot save everyone, but this program is a start, and we're starting with 3 families that will be vetted by Marathon County Department of Social Services and met all the criteria before they will be placed into this location. They are the experts. We're not. We are a policy board. We're not an operational board. Our policy is to instruct the Department of Social Services to follow the statutes that we are required to protect children under Chapter 48. I have 3 reasons why I'm going to support this, and I encourage everyone else to do it, is because the goal is to safely reunite children with their parents in a safe location. Many experiences working with social services, I trust the Marathon County Department of Social Services to do the right thing. Do we know if this program's going to go off without any problems? We don't know that. But I believe that Marathon County Department of Social Services will make this program successful, and success is returning these children to their parents and allow them to be self-sufficient. Thank you, and I hope everybody supports this.
Any other discussion? We'll get to the second rounds as soon as everybody's had a chance to address. I've been keeping track of who has requested a second time, but again, I want to provide the opportunity for any Supervisor Bushman. Every supervisor that has not spoken on the issue is going to get a first chance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking with my constituents as well that had concerns about this, weighing the pros and cons, there is a need for this program. It's designed to help people. The experts, as you said, made their decision and are assuring us that it's going to be well vetted. The one concern is it being a federal funded grant. However, there's been all removal that there's any back pay, any penalty for stopping it or so forth. I think it'd be a great program. I think it's worth trying it. And if it needs further funding, I hope that the success they can incorporate using private funding in the future. But as we said, There's nothing else right now, and it sounds like it's the start to something good.
Supervisor Langenhan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. First of all, I want to thank all the county board supervisors who have provided their comments and their questions in regards to this process. It's good to see an engaged county board. It really is. I do want to make a couple points that haven't been brought up yet. The first thing is that you know, I hope that we all understand that nobody wants to put kids or families in danger. And that also includes the professionals that we have as staff who would be responsible for overseeing this program. Second thing I want to touch on is in regards to future funding opportunities with this county. I know that there has been some discussion philosophically about the ability for grants to flow down to local governments, and if you want to have those discussions, that's perfectly fine, but this isn't the venue to have them. That's at the state level and at the federal level. Down here, we have to have a frank discussion about what this means if we reject this funding and what future opportunities we will have for funding other programs. Infrastructure, for example. We rely on other levels of government for infrastructure assistance. What signals will that send if we have opportunities in the future to potentially impact the county on that front? Third point I want to make is that, and it's a pretty simple idea. There's a lot of people in my district, myself included, that have to pay in for their taxes. I had to pay in last year. It sucks. I would not recommend it. I will say this, though. I would rather see those dollars come back to this county rather than go to another county. There aren't many things that bother me on this board, but seeing those tax dollars of my constituents go to other counties, that would bother me. So in summation, I would highly encourage you all to support this. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board, Mr. Chair.
Any other first-time supervisor or supervisors wanting to speak for the first time? We got Supervisor Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I serve on the Social Services Board. The director brought me in right away and onboarded me and let me know everything that's happening within that department. I learned very quickly that I'm not a social worker. None of us are social workers. These people put a lot of time and energy into taking care of kids, and I trust her staff. I remember last Thursday, the director mentioned that there were 100 years of experience plus in the leadership within that department. So I trust that they put a program together that will reunite kids with their parents in a safe way and will make sure that those parents are successful in parenting in the future. And what I really see here is that we either do the exact same thing that we've always been doing, and I know the team at the social services and the foster care parents do a great job with that already, but I really want to see us innovate and provide a service better to our residents at a lower overall cost. And this is about meeting the needs and reuniting kids with their own parents instead of letting them languish in the foster care system. So I would recommend that we support this. Thank you.
Any other individual supervisors? Supervisor Cavelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also on the Health and Human Services Committee, and I think that in a foster parent, previous foster parent, I know what the kids go through. One of my concerns, and some of my constituents' concerns that have contacted me, is about the Casey Family Foundation. I really haven't gotten the information that I'm looking for on what their role is in this program and what their partnership is. So I did some research on the Casey Family Foundation. They advocate for minority children, blacks, the Indian population, and looking for housing to get their foster kids back with their families. They are based out of Seattle, from what I found, but they do have a political agenda as well. I did notice that they do, and they did fund political activist committees and things like that. So, you know, the information that they do put on their website looks fine and dandy as far as supporting what we're trying to do here. But my concern is what is their role in what we're doing here in Marathon County?
Yep, Vicki, it's not on. There you go. Thank
Okay.
you.
So the grant fund is 100% federal funds. It's one-time money that every state received to be able to address and prepare for Family First, where the funding is going to change and counties, child welfare agencies are going to receive less funding for out-of-home care placement as Family First rolls out. So the federal government allocated one-time dollars to states to basically get ready, though you need to do something different. You need to figure out how services can work differently. So the answer is the grant money is 100% federal money. Casey Family Foundation is involved with the Department of Children and Families in terms of funding the over project design of the family keys. And basically what that means is they're paying for Root Learning. Remember, I had a slide about Root Learning at one point. Root is a group that is doing like the visuals and will do the tracking of the data and have final reports about this type of thing. And that's the financial contribution that Casey Family Foundation is having, is to fund that particular entity to do that. So I want to also add that the housing focus itself was something that has been identified by the Department of Children and Families as a barrier to children being able to be either returned home or, again, in some cases, that they're removed from that. So they're the ones who identified housing as a tangible barrier. There's many things that they're addressing with short-term and long-term focus to get ready for Family First. Housing is just one of them. And that was where this grant came up with this idea of how do we address the barrier that families have of housing? And we were offered an opportunity to be at the table because, in part because of our housing challenges for our child welfare clients.
If I can add one thing, Mr. Chair, and I'll be really brief.
Go ahead.
The short answer, they will have, Casey Family Foundation will have zero interaction with respect to child protection decisions made by our local Department of Social Services. That is our obligation. They are not making decisions of when parents are deemed safe. Our recommendations come from our social workers, are reviewed by our Corporation Counsel's office, and are ultimately approved by a judge. Casey Family Foundation is not involved. And they have nothing to do with the grant. Thanks, Vicki.
Supervisor Mask.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the past, when we've had grants that have started programs and the counties picked up the tab when the grant money ran out, are we going to be doing the same thing now, or will this be delegated to other entities? And secondly, I do support this program. It's a pilot program, but I think that the concept behind it is a great idea. If these people are having trouble with financial issues, it's going to help them get on their feet. And no matter what you do in life, there's always a risk, and I think this is a risk worth taking. But I do want to know about the follow-up on after the grant money is gone.
Please, Vicki.
So one of the pieces I'll remind is that this is a two-phase grant. So the phase 2 of the grant is really opening this up to other partners, and as many people have talked about, involving our private partners in helping to figure out solutions to this problem. And this gives us the opportunity to do that on a longer-term basis. The first part of the grant, the phase that we're talking about tonight, was for us to be able to find housing immediately for child welfare families who have been successful with their court order and do it immediately. That was that focus. The second focus is, what do we do more big picture involving more partners, and that's more of the sustainability piece that you're mentioning. The other thing I would add to that is, and I know many people haven't worked with me for many years, some of you have, is I've always been very clear, and I believe my record is 100%. If I'm saying that I'm not going to move forward and ask for additional levy to continue to fund a pilot project, I'm not going to do that. If this works, and we will have data to see if it works, we'll be able to see if we can save out-of-home care days, the cost associated with foster care and all the related pieces. We can reallocate money if we are going to continue anything like this. But that's a decision that is quite far down the road because we have to be able to prove that it works. So that's really how we operate at the Department of Social Services.
Thanks.
Any other first time, again, supervisors Supervisor Zhang?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the past, we've always respected the opinions of our experts, and last week we've heard from many of the partners that were involved with the whole criminal justice system, specifically in regards to the placement of our children, such as law enforcement, judges, corporation councils. We heard from foster parents. We heard from the state level, and most importantly, we've heard from our experts. Specifically the Department of Social Services, who all supported this program. This pilot project. And I know that the concerns that were brought up by my fellow supervisors are the following, such as safety of the parents and the children involved, the future of this program, and the source of the funds. Obviously, the source of the funds has already been, the answer to that has already been answered, that this is 100% federally funded, and the Kaiser Foundation or the Casey Foundation has nothing to do with this. So that definitely does address some, in my personal opinion, address some of the concerns. In regards to safety, as I mentioned before, many of the partners and organizations or individuals involved with the criminal justice system, specifically in placing of our students, all are saying that this is a great program and are all supportive of this. I guess the remaining question that everybody seems to bring up is the future of this program. And in my personal opinion here, my answer to that is that we will deal with it just like how we deal with every single issue. Once it comes to the board, this board has the authority to deal and act on that issue, specifically this pilot project. So after hearing this and doing research and talking with my constituents, I will be supporting this because I think during the discussions with with our local law enforcement here, what we're doing now is not working. So I strongly encourage my fellow colleagues and supervisors to really look at what we can do here to look at non-traditional sources of funding to help alleviate some of the issues that exist in this community. Thank you.
Just so everybody knows, I am keeping track of all of the people that wishing to speak a second time, and I'm keeping them in order. But again, by Robert's rules, we're supposed to allow each supervisor that wants to address the board an opportunity to address the board first, and then we return to supervisors who wish to provide a second comment. So is there any supervisors who have not spoken yet that wish to address the board? Okay, we will now start the second round. Supervisor Krause was first to address the board a second time.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. And I'd like to make several points. The first one is a former board member who is active in the community in politics and has a very close-knit family. As a former board member, he did reveal to me that he had been in 15 foster parent homes. And that was really amazing to be in 15 homes. I can't imagine the trauma that this particular individual went through. Then, I don't know if you know this or not, but the statistics are, and I'm a member of NAMI, and I also have master's work in individual and family counseling. 1 out of 4 foster children attempt suicide. A lot of them are not happy in their foster homes. And I've heard many tragic situations where in foster homes they've been sexually assaulted and abused and sex trafficked and things. I'm not sure, or I don't know what goes on in Marathon County, if that is even being discussed or brought to the public's attention or to the judges or anything like that. But it does happen, and it happens frequently. The other thing I'd like to say is that we're talking here only about 2 or 3 families. That's not a lot of families. If it was 50 or 80 or 100 families, I could think it might be a big, big issue. But 2 or 3 families, come on. To give them a chance at a new life with their children, I think it's important that they have that chance. I do know, as a low-income person, I have gone to the community dinners. I've gone to Jubilee House, which offers free dinners through the Catholic Church every Thursday. And as I was walking to that from the bus stop, and this was by St. James Catholic Church, I think it's now called Resurrection Church. It was in that an older building that's been torn down now. But there was a woman in a car with her 3 children and their dog. That was their home. That was their home. I don't know where she went from that point on, but they were sleeping in their car. They had all their clothes in their car and their dog, and it smelled. So I think this is a program that's needed. Foster children need to be with their family, with their parents. Parents want them back. These parents went through programs to get their children back. That's a big step. They're not abandoning their children. They're not neglecting their children. They want their children back. And I think we should all vote to have them back. Thank you.
We have next Supervisor Baker, we have Supervisor Shafinsky, Supervisor Boots, and Supervisor Dickinson. In that order, Supervisor Baker is next.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. During our May educational meeting, Sarah Dietrich-Kastorf discussed our roles and responsibilities as County Board Supervisors. She stated that one of the board's roles is that of a visionary. From this, it follows that we as a board are responsible for considering, reviewing, and approving vision statements. The Family Keys vision of success is stated as adequate and safe housing is available to all families, so that lack of such is never a barrier to parents being able to care for their children. During last week's educational meeting, Christy Kill stated the vision of success as adequate and safe housing would be available to all families, so the lack of housing would never be the barrier for returning children back to their families and their parents. In the version read by Christy, the statement reading, returning children back to their families, implies that the program is limited to children who have been removed from their parents and are under the supervision of the court. The actual written version of the vision statement is written, so that lack of such is never a barrier to parents being able to care for their children, which is much broader and is not limited to children under court supervision or children who have been taken from their parents. This much broader vision, without the limit to children under court supervision, is the written vision statement that we are implicitly voting on this evening. We are not just voting on accepting this grant, but we are voting on the program, and that includes that vision statement. During last week's educational meeting, Vicki Tilka confirmed that in phase 2, there could be a larger reach, but stated that the reach would still be limited to children eligible for child welfare. So with this limit, how large is the potential reach for phase 2 in Marathon County? Based on information on the economic support page under the Marathon County Social Services section of our website, it would be my understanding that Badger Care Plus and Food Share are both child welfare programs managed by Marathon County Social Services. I found enrollment data by county for both programs on the Wisconsin DHS website. There are approximately 10,000 children in Marathon County enrolled in Badger Care Plus. There are approximately 7,000 children in Marathon County enrolled in Food Share. So the reach of phase 2 of the Family Keys program would apparently be limited to around 7,000 to 10,000 children in Marathon County. Of course, the program may never expand to this size, but given that our partners are the federal government, the state of Wisconsin, and the city of Wausau, which is interested in providing its residents with a guaranteed basic income, the upper limit on the size of the phase 2 program would seem to be a legitimate concern. We have existing entitlement programs that provide health care and food to thousands of families in Marathon County. Is this program the beginning of a large new entitlement program for housing? Support for this program does not seem to be consistent with a belief in limited government. Support for this program does not seem consistent with a belief in individual freedom and responsibility rather than dependence upon government. As a result, I must vote no. Thank you.
Okay, Vicki wants to respond to some of those questions and statements.
Yes, and I am the one who wrote the vision statement for our Family Keys project, which is very global. And in my mind, that's what a vision statement is. It's something that actually you can never achieve. And it is a goal I would like to see for children, is that no child would be removed from their home because of inadequate housing. So I stand by that. Is that the focus of this particular project? This particular project is specifically for child welfare families. So both of those things are correct that you're saying, and that's how they are living together in that document. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
If I, Mr. Chair, if I can.
Go
offer
ahead,
one thing, just to clarify,
Administrator Leonard.
Badger Care and the other programs you're talking about, those are not child welfare families. When we talk about child welfare families that are open to Child Protective Services, or CPS, that's what we talked about at the last meeting, that we get 1,500 calls was last year, indicating that individuals say, X child, you know, I believe they're being abused, neglected, what have you, to social services. They then conduct a screen-in, screen-out process. We've screened in, I'm gonna go off my memory, about a little over 500 cases last year. That does not mean those cases result in the filing of a court petition. Those are screened in for additional investigation. Of those 500 cases, I believe we filed a little over 100 last year. So it's not 7,000 families. We're talking about 100 children that are open to child protection, that become open to child protection in a given year. Historically, that number has been in that 150 to down to, I think, 80 is my historical reference. But many of those families have multiple children that result in petitions. So like Mike referenced last time, we might have a family that when you show up to court as a prosecutor, you're hearing 4 petitions. Or, I think the highest I've ever had was, I think we had over 10 or 11. It matters, each of those, that's the number we're talking about, not 7,000. It's ranging between that 150 to 80 historically. But I just want to make very clear, it's not, the fact that someone's on Badger Care does not make them a child welfare family, at least as the term is used in child protection.
Supervisor Shafinsky.
Thank you, Chairman. As we go around the room, a number of people have identified many different stories, many different anecdotes, some of which truly tug at our heartstrings. I think it's important that we realize, though, that all of these come back and share some common denominators. First of all, most of these situations did not happen magically because a bolt out of the blue came out of the sky and hit somebody. These are the results of bad choices, poor choices that these parents have made. And my understanding, although it's certainly at quite a distance from the social service department, is that these are not one-off decisions. You need, as a parent, or perhaps someone who should be a parent but is not doing that job, you need to make poor decisions repeatedly and often before you're going to be involved in the family court system. These people do not have a strong sense of independence, of reliance, of pride. Those are bedrocks that used to be part and parcel of what our civic society comprised. And we've lost much of that over the last 50 years. Some of that's been lost due to well-intentioned efforts to put together social programs. At the end of the day, though, we look at this, and after many, many billions of dollars spent nationally, many thousands upon thousands of dollars spent locally, we are in a worse situation than we were 50 years ago. And I see nothing in this program that actually sets out concrete, detailed plans on how you're going to take people who are failed parents and actually turn their lives around because they've spent 3 to 6 months or 9 months in a semi-supervised environment. The other thing is, this board exists to set policy. And it seems that the policy choices we have before us or that are being offered, on the one hand, is to get involved in setting up public housing. And I think there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is a toe in the door for that. Nothing ever starts out huge. It starts out small and grows. Or we can make a public policy decision that says we're going to break with what we've done over the last 50 years and say, no, with all good intentions, we haven't been successful. We need to try something very different, not just a minor variation. And for those reasons, I will be voting no.
Supervisor Boots. Questions called. There is, at this point, our rules also allow additional discussion by the individuals in the queue. I have in the queue currently one additional supervisor, and that is Supervisor Dickinson. Is there an objection to question being called? Okay, there has been no objection to question being called. Okay, is there a second to question being called? Seconded by Supervisor Seubert. We will proceed to vote on the question being called, but we will allow one additional supervisor that was in the queue, that is Supervisor Dickinson, to address the board because that's per our board rules. So currently, the motion before us is a motion to call question and end debate. It does require a 2/3 majority. It is not debatable, and so we will proceed to vote on question being called. All those in favor of Supervisor Langenhan?
Mr. Chair, can you clarify the voting choices, aye or nay?
A aye will end debate with one additional speaker, and that will be Supervisor Dickinson. A no will allow debate to continue. So an aye will end debate, a no with a 2/3 majority, and a no will allow debate to continue. Supervisor Stravinsky.
I would ask that we have a roll call vote.
Roll call vote has been requested, so we'll have a roll call vote. Is everybody clear on what you're voting on? What you're voting on is the ending of debate. An aye will end debate and proceed to allow one additional speaker, and then we will have a vote on the original motion on the floor. So I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Lamont. Nay. Langenhan.
Aye.
Leahy.
Aye.
Lemmer.
Aye.
Marshall.
Aye.
Mask.
Aye.
McEwen.
Aye.
Morash.
No.
Niemeyer.
No.
Oberbeck.
Aye.
Opal is excused. Ritter.
Aye.
Robinson.
No.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Seefelt.
Aye.
Seubert.
No.
Stravinsky.
No.
Sandelsky.
No.
Straub.
No.
Ungerer.
No.
Van Cray.
No.
Vensky.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Zhang.
Aye.
Arstead.
Aye.
Baker.
Nay.
Boots.
Aye.
Book.
Aye.
Bushman.
Aye.
Cavelli.
No.
Dickinson.
No.
Drabeck.
Aye.
Gibbs.
Aye.
Gisselman.
Aye.
Gonering.
Aye.
Hart.
Aye.
Hardinger.
No.
Krause.
Aye.
Thank you.
And the motion is defeated. It is 14 to 23. That is one more than 1/3, 2/3 required to, or one short of the 2/3 required to end debate. Debate will continue. Supervisor Dickinson is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple comments on some of this information that's brought up. So the federal government spent $90 billion on housing in 2021. So just think about that number when we're talking about taxpayer money and fiscal responsibility. That was a 70% increase in 1 year. So the amount of funds that are being driven into programs is huge, and this is one of those. Number two, when we talk about this Casey Foundation, and I think it's a little bit muddled about all of it as far as how much it really matters. But in 2020, the Children's Bureau at HHS and the Administration for Children and Families, the ACF, government organizations, announced a partnership with the Casey Family Programs and the Annie Casey Foundation. In a joint press release, this is what they stated. This is the first of its kind partnership. Thriving families, safer children will work across the public, private, and philanthropic sectors to assist jurisdictions in creating more just and equitable systems that benefit all children and families and break harmful cycles of trauma and poverty. The president of the Casey Family Programs, William Bell, stated, "Every child deserves a safe, stable, and permanent family, and all families deserve the opportunities and supports to raise their children safely and successfully in their own homes, communities, and cultures." This important effort, the release stated, will demonstrate how all sectors of a community can work together to reallocate resources into equitable, hope-inspiring services and supports to create more just, equitable, and humane child and family well-being systems. And Sandra Gasca Gonzalez, the vice president of the Annie Casey Foundation, stated, "Now is the time to reimagine how we as a collective of caring and supportive adults can redefine the mission and objectives of child welfare to help ensure all children, Black, Brown, and Indigenous families who have been overrepresented in our systems have the opportunities they need and deserve to thrive." So if we want to state what we want to state about Casey, the foundations, the Casey Foundation is working with the federal government to help create these kinds of programs. So is Casey going to be here? Clearly not. But the money is coming from organizations that have a particular mindset about how to drive that fund. So I just want to state that because I think there was a question brought up or a thought brought up, and then there was a little bit. So I just wanted to clear that that exists. Additionally, Family First, I stated this before, it's for congregate settings. The focus of it was for not so that kids couldn't go to foster care, but that it was in the congregate setting that they didn't want kids to go to. And they wanted them actually to go to high-quality treatment programs. They wanted a study of that. So it was about the congregate settings. There is no requirement to take all kids out of foster care. A couple other comments, Mr. Chair, that were brought up and that I just want to throw out there. It is fiscally responsible to reject a grant. There is no cost analysis on this to state how much money we're going to save in or how much money it's going to cost us in year one outside of the grant. We had the question before about what this position was going to do, and Vicki actually came up and clarified that it is a new hire, that $104,000. It's a new person being hired, but there are going to be costs associated with everyone working together in the county to make this program move. And it is fiscally responsible to consider the future. And it is fiscally responsible, and it is our duty as a board. It's not just budget, it's not just policy, it's also budget. We do need to be looking at what the future will hold in a year or two from now. This board might not all be here. We might all be replaced. So we have a responsibility to make a decision now of what potentially it would look like in 2 years. There was a question or a thought brought up about private partners. I would kind of challenge the private partners. Where are you now? There are people being helped by nonprofits in the area. I think we're all aware of that. Where are these organizations now? Why are they waiting for the government to take a lead? And then they're going to tie on later. There's no guarantee that they'll tie on later. And if and when they don't, what's going to happen? it's going to be county tax levy. It's going to be county funds. Whether it's moved out of how we're doing foster care, it's going to be brought in. So there is that concern. The last thing I'll state is simply this. No one wants to see children in harm's way. But I think my responsibility and the way I look at my role in government in this role is to take the emotion out of the decision. Because I can't care for every child and I can't care for every parent who's in that tough situation. So when I remove the emotion of it, I have to focus on what seems best at this time. And for me, best at this time is to allow other people to get the proof of concept. Let's see how that works, and then we can tie into it. Because one other question I would have is, how come only 3 counties are doing this? It's only Wood, La Crosse, and us. Where are the other counties? Have they voted on it? Have they been asked? Maybe there's an answer to that. I don't know. Thank you.
Vicki, you want to address some of those questions? Yeah, as I understand it, the state of Wisconsin requested and directly requested and solicited projects from 3 counties, La Crosse, Wood, and Marathon County. So the other counties were not asked. Moving on to Supervisor Lamont.
Chairman, can I ask just a follow-up on that? Just a clarification as do we know why these 3 counties were asked? Do we have any information about that?
Vicki can answer the question.
Three counties were asked for 2 reasons. One is the lack of safe and accessible housing in each of the counties that are available to families and child welfare families in particular, because this is the target group. So all 3 counties face that challenge. That's number 1. And number 2 is that our child welfare agencies have expressed this as a barrier to families being reunited in our conversations with the Department of Children and Families. And I'm not saying other counties haven't also expressed it. I wouldn't be privy to that. But I know for sure that the 3 counties who were asked if they would be interested and to talk about different efforts that they had in the community definitely brought this forward as a barrier. In Marathon County specifically, there definitely are partners who are helping to address the housing issue. There aren't any that are really doing this at this point for families as a whole. It's more so for adults. So that's a barrier that we had particularly in our community. But that's the answer, both on need and both on willingness to participate with partners.
Okay, other discussion. Supervisor Vensky had his hand raised earlier, but Supervisor Lamont is next.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just want to have a last brief comment, and thank you for voting to give me this chance. I had it written down. I wanted to share it. And it is a heart approach to share here. With discernment, we also have to use our hearts in these matters, I believe. And I appreciate parents being concerned about other parents' children. I wonder if their opinion would change if it was their children, if they're in their shoes. If it was you, would you try it if it was an option to be reunited with your children? And that's why thinking about that, I support this project, and I ask you to think about that when you vote. Thank you.
Supervisor Vensky.
I'm going to take back my question.
Pardon me?
I'll take it back. I don't have no question.
Okay, Supervisor Langenhahn is next.
To be fair, Mr. Chair, I believe Supervisor Seibert.
Go ahead. You go ahead. I'll go after you.
Well, I'll make this short. Mr. Chair, in the event that no new information is being provided to this board, I'm going to call the question.
Okay, Supervisor Soibert has also been in the queue and identified. Is there an objection to question being called? Is there any objection to question being called? Supervisor Krause with the objection. Is there a second to question being called? Supervisor Ritter with a second. Again, this is not debatable. We will proceed to vote on, and understand that Supervisor Soibert will have the last word if the motion to call question is upheld. We will end debate. Again, so a motion, an aye vote will uphold the motion of question being called, and a successful aye amount of votes will end debate, and a no vote will allow debate to continue. Is everybody clear on what we're voting on? We're only voting on ending debate on the issue. Again, Supervisor Soibert will be recognized. He was in the queue. I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Longenhan.
Aye.
Leahy.
Aye.
Lemmer.
Aye.
Marshall.
Aye.
Mask.
Aye.
McEwen.
Aye.
Morash.
Aye.
Niemeyer.
Aye.
Overbeck.
Aye.
Ritter.
Aye.
Robinson.
No.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Seefelt.
Aye.
Soibert.
Aye.
Shervinsky.
Aye.
Sondelski. Straub.
Aye.
Ungerer.
Aye.
Van Cray.
No.
Vensky.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Zhang.
Aye.
Arstead.
Aye.
Baker.
No.
Boots.
Aye.
Book.
Aye.
Bushman.
Aye.
Cavelli.
No.
Dickinson.
Aye.
Drabeck.
Aye.
Gibbs.
Aye.
Gisselman.
Aye.
Gonnering.
Aye.
Hart.
Aye.
Hardinger.
Aye.
Krause.
No.
Lamont.
No.
Thank you.
The ayes have it, and so debate will end after one more comment, and that will be Supervisor Soibert with the recognition on the floor. So Supervisor Soibert has the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs. First, I'd like to apologize for prolonging this. My thing is numbers. Nobody's talked numbers. We're talking $305,000 for 2 years. The rent comes, if we have 3 families with 4 people in a family, 2 adults, 2 kids, there's 6 kids. That's $13,000 a month rent for the 6 kids. It's going to cost us $25,000 if we have 11 kids per kid. That money can be spent better for the kids than giving a landlord $13,000 a month rent. That's all I have. Look at the numbers. Thank you.
Ms. Tilko will address some of those comments.
So I don't have the numbers right in front of me to run the math. What I would say is when we were calculating this, that the cost per family, and remember, families are going to cycle through, so families, we're projecting 3 to 4 could be there at a time, but it'll be multiple families over the course of the year that would benefit from this service. But our calculation was such that a family that would be in this setting for a month, it would be comparable to the type of housing that is available to them in the community right now that they are not able to access. So while the cost may seem high per family, per month, it was comparable to the housing industry that would be available to them in Marathon County.
Okay, now debate is ended. We will proceed to vote. And I will support the motion to approve. A no will support the motion to, or will not support the motion and will deny the motion. Again, this does require a 2/3 majority.
I'd like to request a roll call vote.
Roll call vote has been requested. No second is needed on a roll call request. And we will proceed to vote. Is everybody clear on what we're voting on? A vote of aye will allow the grant to be allocated to the Family Keys project. A vote no would effectively return the potential return the grant to the state. All right, is everybody clear? And we'll proceed with the vote.
Leahy,
Yes.
Lemmer,
Yes.
Marshall,
No.
Mask,
Yes.
McEwen,
Yes.
Morash,
No.
Niemeyer,
No.
Oberbeck,
Yes.
Ritter,
No.
Robinson,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Seefeld,
Yes.
Zoidberg,
No.
Sherfinsky,
No.
Sandelsky,
No.
Straub,
No.
Ungerer,
No.
Van Cray,
Yes.
Vensky,
Yes.
Wilhelm,
No.
Zhang,
Yes.
Arstead,
Yes.
Baker,
No.
Boots,
Yes.
Book,
Yes.
Bushman,
Yes.
Cavelli,
No.
Dickinson,
No.
Drabeck,
Yes.
Gibbs,
Yes.
Gisselman,
Yes.
Gonnering,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Hardinger,
No.
Krause,
Yes.
Lamont,
Yes.
Longenhan.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion fails due to a lack of 2/3 majority. Moving on to the remaining budget transfer is the $4,500 budget transfer for the communication system at the Sheriff's Department. What is your pleasure? Vice Chair McEwen with the motion, and seconded by Supervisor Langenhan. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion to support the approval of the budget transfer of $4,500 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried and is unanimous. We'll move on to announcements and/or requests. We need signatures from HR, Finance, and Public Safety. And I will make a bit of an announcement on the mileage requests, just for some clarification points. First off, everybody, when they submit their mileage request, please attach a copy of your insurance that covers the quarter that the mileage reimbursement expense request is for. So for example, if the request is for last quarter, which was April, May, and June, attach a copy or take a picture of your deck sheet on your insurance and attach it to the application for the mileage. Also, the mileage request is to cover mileage driven during that quarter, April, May, and June, and only in your official capacity on the board, full board, or your committee assignments, unless you're pre-authorized for or authorized for other travel. Again, they will, those requests will be honored, like I said, and in moving forward, again, please remember that it's quarterly. So the next quarter will be July, August, September, and they will be due by October 15th. Any other announcements and/or requests? Supervisor Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to use this opportunity to invite my fellow colleagues to join the Mpong Wausau Festival that will be occurring next week. The Grand Parade will begin at 9 a.m., and I would ask everybody to arrive before 8:30. We're expecting the city of Wausau's population to increase by 25% for that weekend next week. So I'm hoping that everybody will be able to join us. Thank you.
Any other announcements and/or requests? Then we're down to the infamous motion. Motion by Supervisor Dickinson, second by Supervisor Rosenberg to adjourn. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.